Let's talk Indiana. We have problems.
Project 2025. Many of you have already heard about it. Some of you are just learning about it, but much of it is already underway here in Indiana.
This limited series podcast highlights many elements of Project 2025 and how it impacts Indiana.
Okay, well, hello, Indiana. We are here for our second part 2 of Let's Talk Indiana. I'm here with Mark and Dana Black. We came here together to talk about Project 2025 and how it's going to impact Indiana. And what a week. We dove into education last week. And lo and behold, we're going to touch on it again today because good old Governor Braun, candidate Governor Braun, rolled out a property tax plan. And we could not move on to the next topic without touching back on education because we all know how this is going to really impact education. So we're going to start us off with a little dive in and a recap from last week. And we couldn't let this go. Mark, take us away.
Well, thank you very much, Mary. I think one of the first things that everybody talks about is I want to get rid of my taxes. And it's been around since we've been a state. Everybody says we got to cut our taxes, lower our taxes. Everybody wants to say that we don't even pay taxes. But if we don't pay taxes, we don't have police, we don't have a sheriff's department, we don't have jails, we don't have the courts, the system, the civil court system in any way. They run elections. You don't have your marriage licenses. All these things that the taxpayers are putting into to pay for would go away. And the tax structure right now under this GOP supermajority has been a disaster. And we talked about that, just touched on a little bit from 2016 when they set this calculation up that by the time 2019 and 20 rolled around, it was a train wreck, and it still is today. So we're sitting on $3 or $4 billion in our surplus right now. So we can't touch that. That's that rainy day fund. But you folks probably going to see some tax cuts if Mike Braun is your champion you're going to vote for, which is not a winning thing because you're going to lose all the social services you so depend on. Your thoughts, Dana Black?
I couldn't agree more with you guys. Now, listen, I do understand that maybe capping seniors' property taxes, if they're still in their homes, might be of benefit because they're on a fixed income typically. And so what that means is that they're not out trying to get raises. They are just trying to sustain what they have. So maybe I can understand, keeping and capping seniors' property taxes. But to cut property taxes means that our school systems, we talked about education a lot last week, and that was a good thing, but our school systems are dependent upon property taxes. We already have school districts in Marion County where we had to, sublease contractors to drive the buses. And in some cases, some school districts were saying we don't have enough money for transportation to get kids to school. So when these people propose these tax cuts, do they not think about the long-term impact that it will have on citizens? I think not. Or they really don't care. I mean, that's the other option. They just don't care.
I think it's a little of both. Yeah.
Right? A little of both. You know what bugs me is when you think about it, if we're going to cut, we already seen them attack the community services with healthcare. The Department of Ed, Department of Health, Board of Health have been coming under attack. Now you're talking education because that's where you get the bulk of your money through your local property tax. That includes our fire and police, supporting our fire and police communities. Those would get cut. And the other thing you have to think about, okay, if you're going to cut the property taxes, where is the other income? Where's the income going to come? And all the studies show it goes back on low income families because the states with the lowest property and income taxes actually have the highest sales taxes. So when you go have to buy that new car, or you have to buy that new washer and dryer, or you have to, put some cost into your house because the pipes burst, there's hidden taxes in there. And that's where those are going to come. It's going to be fees and taxes and other entities. They have to get the money somewhere.
And we always talk about we want the best and the brightest to be our elected officials. Well, if we don't have the income to pay our county commissioners, our county counselors, and our mayors, who are we going to have? That guy from Clark County that robbed and put all the money in his pocket? So you have to be able to, if you're going to attract the best and the brightest to be public servants, you have to give them a living wage so they can be an honest broker. You can't, have people stressed about income and writing policy. That's not a good combination.
Right.
And as cities expand, let's remember that we're going to expand fire and police protection to those areas. Those things take money to be able to build and get that thing even started, much less maintaining and buying new machinery to keep the machine moving. And the school systems, our HVAC units, I guess we're just going to let the kids swelter in the classrooms with their teachers. I mean, the list goes on and on. Your county recorders, your court people that I talked about earlier, the jail folks, things like that. We listened for years to the GOP telling us that they were the party of law and order,
Yeah.
yet they're working to dismantle it piece by piece. It's amazing to watch.
Oh yeah, they defund the police. Go ahead, Mary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, what's interesting is we remember the last legislative session, they talked very much about the cost that families have to carry with educational books. You know, that was new to me when I came here to Indiana. That
As it was to me too. Correct. That was not something I grew up with. Correct.
I was like, wow, you don't get that big heavy textbook at home, put the brown paper bag on it, and you know it's there for multiple years. That families had to pay for it. What's interesting is these families will have to, those fees will come up higher. In doing the research, hospital fees will get hit. We have some of the highest costs for hospital care here. There'll be some additional fees in that. And I also noticed that because of those additional fees and the high cost of hospitals, it really hit the rural hospitals really, really hard.
Everything hits rural Indiana harder. Everything, because there's less people and there's less tax base.
There you go.
But but see, here's the thing, and I'm going to say it, the idea that they typically want to target, minority communities, Black communities, Hispanic communities, when they end up hurting rural America, rural Indiana, and in Indiana, that's mostly rural white people, because there's not a lot of Black and brown folks in rural Indiana. So, I know a lot of people don't ever want to say it's about race, but when I think about redlining and when I think about, where vouchers come from, I recognize that there's a power structure, and we can call them white Christian nationalists, that really believe that they are the only ones that should have access to the greatness of America. They are the only ones that should be able to benefit for what it is to be an American. We should all pay into it, but they're the only ones should be able to benefit from it. And the idea that we are, again, these are the same people that would refuse to put a snowplow on their Tesla, right? These are the same. Think about it. They got a Tesla, but when the streets need to be plowed, they're not going to put a plow on it, right?
Yeah.
They're not going to pick up their own trash. I just think this is short-sighted. It is not looking out for the long-term financial health of our communities and our counties and our cities. I think it's a bad. The only thing that I would keep, and I don't have a problem with this, is capping for seniors, because again, they're on fixed income.
And haven't they given enough to our communities over these years?
They have. So that is the only thing about his plan that I like, because the rest of it means that services that counties and municipalities provide
and our seniors depend on.
We're supposed to be in this together, but it looks like what do you think that's going to, guys, what do they think is going to happen when people are really desperate? What do they think is going to happen?
You just hit the nail on the head. We're supposed to be in this together. Whatever happened to collective community services that we all benefit from? And when you look at the quality of life, good old Mike Hicks, we all rely on him for a good analysis on the economy.
He killed it again today, too.
You were so right. Again, right? But what he's always come down to, it's not just about the numbers. It's not just about low taxes. It's not just about the numbers across the board. It's about a quality of life. When you take that quality of life away, that's why people are moving. That's why people who have young children or, young adults who are graduating from college and are moving out and not coming home. I can name a lot of friends right now who are like, oh, yeah, my son moved to California. Yeah, my daughter's up in Chicago. They're not coming back. It is a whole holistic approach to really attracting and keeping communities thriving. And this is not the direction we need to be going in.
Which says to me, the goal isn't to grow Indiana. It is to keep it exactly like it is and make it a worker bee state where we can.
And here's what we're going to pay you. This is what you're going to get. This is the market demands this. So if the entire threshold of what you have to live with or what you need is pretty low compared to other states around you, and you're 50th in everything else, like the quality of air, water, and other things we've talked about, you're right. They don't care. They're just going to say, hey, this is all we're paying. Living wage, that's $12.50. You're going to like it.
And if you don't have those resources to begin with, you can't even begin to look for something else. You don't know.
You'll never move.
You'll never move.
You can't move.
I got families in Mississippi right now that have, that have never moved outside of the space that they're in because they just can't.
Right.
Wow.
Right. There's no
Something's
resource.
amiss when you look at the metrics and we have a good, when you have the affordability of the housing compared to like, some of the other states like California and Massachusetts and New York, when you have some good metrics, when you have some good viability attraction points for people to come, but when this is so off, you're never going to get folks to stay or stay here in
No.
India. It's not going to happen.
No. And if they
Yeah.
do, if they're going to be concentrated in
Right.
a Marion County, and they're going to be concentrated in an Allen County or a Lake County, which means then the other 90 counties become welfare counties
Those rural counties again, in this case, yes.
that begin to drain whatever
Yep.
little resources the larger cities and towns have. I don't know. I just question, what do they want for humans? What do they want for their fellow citizens? And it doesn't sound like they want much.
Nobody in the media is asking those questions of these candidates in any way. I just would love to stand. I have a job. I'm kind of trapped in my place here, but if I could stand in a Mike Braun presser, I would be one of the first people asking those kind of questions. And I don't know why there isn't somebody spouting off like that, but because they're under that pressure. If you remember back, Jim Banks got someone fired here or released to free up their opportunities to be able to work elsewhere because they asked too many tough questions. He went in and cried to the director, and amazingly enough, that person doesn't work here anymore in this marketplace. So it's sad. But let me give you some other stuff, and I want to throw something different, a little bit side a pitch here. In all the hype of all the great things that happened last week, we forgot that last week was the 13th birthday of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. What's that about? Well, it was 13 years ago that we put that together, and it was to keep Americans and protect them from bad mortgages, credit cards, and other financial products. Now, Project 2025 and Agenda 47 equally want to stop that because they think that folks that have that are trying to bilk things. It's an unauthorized, unaccountable federal agency, and it's unconstitutional. They want to disband it immediately.
You mean to tell
any
me the
protections we put together, they want to take away immediately.
You mean the guy that was found guilty of fraud wants to get rid of the Consumer Protection Agency?
You can't make this up.
Or his university that was taking people's money fraudulently.
Or robbing his own charity?
Right. I had to throw that in. Thank you for letting me throw that out there.
That was the tickle for the day. I mean, you set it up on the wiffle ball bat. I mean, it was...
Oh,
Right
true
on the
world.
mark.
It's a true world, I tell you. Oh, yes. But, the thing we talked about rural things. Part of this Agenda 47 that the Trump administration is working towards, which is an arm of, if you look at it, Project 2025, the Republican Study Committee and their budgets, and Agenda 47 all have one unique tie, which is the Heritage Foundation. So they're pouring billions into Heritage so that they can have these tributaries going out and taking care of all this and then acting like they're all individual things moving in their own way. When I did a Chat GPT piece that someone had set up where you put in a question for it and it spits out an answer to you, and the question would be the comparison of Agenda 47 to Project 2025, one of the amazing things I found out about was the GOP in charge in Washington would love to get rid of farmers abusing the subsidies and credits and even crop insurance. They would like to do away with that because, those farmers are bilking the system. These are the hidden feature things that are down in there. I know we have things we're going to talk about today, but I couldn't resist this. They want to rid all of these programs. And if they cannot completely scrap the ARC, which is the Agricultural Risk Program, and the PLC, the Price Loss Coverage, which is insurance for folks that lose this crop, people aren't going to be eating. Okay. There are farmers that will fold. Okay.
They'll be eating, but all the farmers will be corporate farmers. There will no longer be any independent farmers. And so therein lies the problems, which means they can then dictate the pricing of food. Right.
Yeah, there you have it.
And if we get rid of if we're getting rid of labor laws and overtime pay that they want to get rid of, that means I can get somebody working out in that field for 12 hours a day. See, this is
nailed it.
This is all,
you nailed it.
It's all tied.
Did anybody not read about the robber barons?
And here we go again. Absolutely right. We're going back. History is repeating itself, which is why we don't want public education to teach history.
All
Bingo.
day. All day. I mean, golly, we have seen this story before. This is not,
Yeah.
and I ain't even gonna say I'm a historian or a scholar. These are things I happened to pick up that day I was awake in history class.
And for me, my favorite
Hey, you're
is,
talking to the old history teacher, Dana. You are asleep in my class.
yes, I believe she was right in the front row.
That's it.
I follow a couple of TikTok teachers, and Sari Beth Rosenberg from New York, who is a history teacher, has been on a number of PBS shows and has done a number of things. And she was at the AFT convention last week. And one of the things I thought was great was she showed Kamala Harris, who had already been booked long before everything happened, to speak there last week, Wednesday or Thursday. And she looks right at Randy Weingarten as she's giving her speech and says, "Can you believe they wrote this stuff down in Project 2025? They actually wrote it out?"
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's just-
can believe
and that
it.
was the key. That was the key. And here we are being able to decipher through it, but sad that they even had to write it out like that. But they understand the people that they're putting in charge of doing these things had to have a playbook.
They had to have a
Okay.
playbook. And here's the
Yeah.
other thing: they also know that people are way too busy to read 900 pages.
That's why we're here.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's why we're here. Guys, we wanted to talk about the social safety net and how it's impacted by Project 2025. You know, all of us, I'm not telling nobody's age, but I'm going to assume we're all at least Gen Xers, right?
Correct.
Okay,
I was
we're
born
all-
in the early
Right here.
60s.
Raise your hand.
Oui,
Okay, we're all Gen Xers.
1971.
1970. And by the way, we have a Gen Xer running for president finally. So I'm super excited about it.
oui. Right. You finally get what you deserve.
It took us a while, but we got a Gen Xer running.
Right.
But we are.
Thank you for your patience. Let me just say that. Thank you
well,
for your patience. Because I've always said this. I said, why don't we put women in charge? Because the guys have been doing this forever, and look where we are.
Man,
Can
right.
we do this? I'm ready.
Well, I've always said Gen Xers, we were resting on the work of our seniors, the generation that came before us. We were like, look, y'all made it easy for us. We ain't got to do nothing. And then because we did it, do what we were supposed to do, the other side came up and said they want to snatch it away. But the social safety net, right, is one of those areas where this is where government does good, because
Correct.
everyone doesn't have the same ability. Everyone doesn't have the same access. And how do we make sure that folks are living quality lives? And that's where the government has a chance to step up. Mary, I know this one was top on your list as well. And I know, Mark, you're going to hit it from the labor perspective.
Right.
Mary, talk to us about, the impact that Project 2025 will have on our social safety net, meaning our Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, things like that.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. So here's the thing. Of course, all the time, now that they put it out in writing, the people who wrote it, the Heritage Foundation and Trump, they're all trying to distance themselves. The biggest thing out there is we all saw the graphics come around because we pulled out the high level things that now they're saying, no, we're not looking to cut Social Security. And I challenge that and say, no, we need to look under the hood, because while it might not be a slash, what they're proposing is raising the retirement age. Okay, if you raise the retirement age, how is that going to impact people's Social Security? They're going to have to work longer. There's also things in there that they want to limit the amount of hours or the amount of money you can take if you are on Medicaid. Okay, well, if you have an illness or a sickness comes along, so now you're going to clock me in for something that is going to require 5 years, 4 months Medicare. They're going to clock you in. And the other thing that really, really struck me when we talk about the social services, the veterans. I was really surprised and unfortunate how much they want to slash some of the services going to the veterans. And coming to the forefront of that was 50% of the Veterans Administration they want to slash. And then the next 4 years, 70%. And here's the kicker. When you look under the hood, the services that they're saying that the Veterans Administration provide to our veterans, they want to move it over to their favorite thing,
Privatize it.
privatization.
Oh, my
There you
God.
go.
Yeah.
That's been their
Right?
fever dream for the last decade, for sure.
Yeah.
They say it doesn't work. Nothing's working. Education's not working. Let's privatize it. The
That
VA's
was their
not
goal.
working.
Yeah.
Let's
Yep.
privatize it.
But
Yep.
but every time there's a contamination in the water, or there's somebody poisoned from Tylenol, people forget that without regulations and oversight and having some government intervention, people die.
Yep.
all the
And,
time.
and I don't mean to
Yes.
sound so morbid, but if I'm in it to make a profit, if everything that I do is about making a profit, then I'm going to skimp on things to maximize that profit. I remember Rachel Maddow saying once, everything that we do in government is not about making a profit.
No. No.
And if you hand over those sources, those things, healthcare is not about making a profit. It
No.
shouldn't be.
No.
Yeah.
You know, now
No.
I will say, I am not a fan of insurance companies. Not at all.
Complicated.
Complicated. It's a complicated industry, right?
But built by design to do that so you don't become a fan and get into it any deeper.
Exactly. One thing I would not mind is having a direct billing relationship with my doctor. See, I'm trying to find the good, and I don't know how I'm doing it, but I try to find the good in these people because I keep thinking that they're not as evil as it sounds. Think about if we could cut out the middleman, and that you could set up a health savings account with your doctor directly. Now, the problem with
At
that
the
is
clinic. Yeah.
the
right.
problem with that is what if you need a specialist? Right. What is the,
True.
what's the caveat of, and do I have to set one up with my primary care physician, my cardiologist, my OBGYN, and oh, wait, that's why we have insurance.
Yeah. Right.
Right. It's a hill to climb. It sounds I understand where your head's at to think that, but it's bigger than that too, because Dana's situation isn't Mark's, isn't Mary's, isn't
Yep.
Tom's, and it just goes, the list goes on. I was saying something to somebody the other day. They said, well, what meds do you take? And I said, actually, I take vitamins. I'm lucky enough that I don't. And then I start realizing I talked to 6 people in 10 minutes. Every one of them is on some 1, 2, or 3 meds. And they were all within a few years of age. And I realized then I am kind of on my own here. I am a rare person that's this age that's just doing that. So healthcare is so important to people. And just in healthcare for all or Medicare for all, that just chokes the GOP. They cannot stand it because their insurance lobbyists are the ones telling them, do not accept that. Do not try and control it, because we want to control the prices. We want to jack the insulin back up. We want to control what pharma says. And pharma and insurance are hand in hand when they do that too.
Well, you nailed it, because as we said, the theme is privatization, right? And Indiana ranks 10th. It was 8 before, now it's 10. It toggles back and forth in the highest healthcare costs across the country. And as I will say, we're gonna reference him a lot because Mike Hicks nails it every time. He says one of the reasons we have the highest expenses for our hospitals and healthcare is because the monopolies that the GOP legislator has allowed to happen with our, get this, nonprofit hospitals. Wait a minute. We have nonprofit hospitals. They're making the biggest profits off of our community. At what point is that line need to be drawn that it's not about profit, it's putting that money back in the community for healthcare?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Because you see, they don't even care whether or not, you put your kids in the Head Start to give them a chance. They're trying to kill Head Start. I'm going back to it, but it's like, again, I asked the question, who is looking out for the people? One of the reasons why after I ran for office, I ran for office because I was an angry lesbian over RFRA. But once you start learning about the issues that are happening in Indiana, you go, who the hell is lobbying for the people? And
There isn't. There isn't.
And
No.
that's problematic.
Yeah.
It is, considering we've had, I don't know if you guys knew this, 17 counties across the state of the Indiana do not have hospitals.
Yes, I knew that.
And 50% only have one.
Yeah.
So if you only have one hospital, you're talking less specialists, less opportunity to see doctors, harder to get your kids in to see the
And it's not a new building either. It's definitely in disrepair. It's been around for a while. That's what their whole goal was we know it's a desert when it comes to food and or healthcare, but guess what? If you get in the car, I don't have a car. I don't have transportation that's going to get me to that town to get to that healthcare. Your ambulance ride.
Yeah. When it's an emergent situation, how long does it take for them to get to you in an emergency situation
and to that
and
hospital.
then get you to the hospital? See, a lot of this, again, when they craft these laws and these policy positions, it is obvious that they're drafting them and crafting them from a position of privilege. And I want to make sure that I said that right, because privilege can mean a lot of different things. So if you've never been hungry, or never needed to get to a doctor and couldn't get there, you don't think about what it is to need a doctor and not get there. And so that's why it's important that regular everyday people get involved, be civically engaged to bring different perspectives, thought perspectives about how policy can impact people both positively and negatively. It just appears that these folks who are writing this stuff, they pay their doctor with a check, or they give them their Amex Black card, or whatever it is.
It's covered.
Yeah, it's covered. And there's a theme. We mentioned privatization. We mentioned hospital deserts. I know we came back to childcare, but in the rural areas, it's not unheard of for the average family to have to drive 40 miles to a licensed childcare facility. That was the study done in 2023, and they still have not addressed the child care issue.
Actually, they did. In the last General Assembly session, they lowered the barrier of entry for non-licensed daycare centers. So you can, non-licensed daycare centers, you can open it up. You don't worry about it. They passed it. So they did address it, Mary. They addressed it in a way of saying, well, if it's hard to get to a licensed one, you can just go to one of them unlicensed ones.
Yeah, that's not solving the problem.
Oh, really? They thought it was.
Created more problems. Yeah.
In Indiana, I also noticed too on the child care issue, because it's all tied to education, lowering the property taxes, providing services, community. We need community. That the average cost that families pay in child care in Indiana is one of the highest, $14,000 a year.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that
Senseless.
crazy vice president pick one, know why people ain't got no daggone kids. Are you kidding me?
I can't afford a kid.
Crazy
I can't even
cat
buy a
lady.
used car. Yeah.
I was actually offended that he called us childless people cat ladies, because I'm allergic to cats.
Dana Black, I can't top that. I would nothing I could say right now could top that.
I mean, guys, I listened to this. Okay, keep diving, y'all. Don't let my ADD distract us from what we need to talk about today.
Well, we when Mary brought up, traditional Medicare, they'd like to stop the federal government from negotiating drug prices, and that clearly is not anything that you, I, or anybody's listening here is going to say, yeah, I support that. No, we do want that. And look at how we got that $35 insulin. Who supported that? Pretty much the Democrats straight across the board. Every Republican was said no to it because they're in there with their lobbyists before they make that decision.
But what's
Even
crazy
worse,
about that, before you go
go
there,
ahead.
the fact that they're saying that we can't lobby or negotiate drug prices when America is paying more than the countries around us for the same medication from the same manufacturer. That's
Correct.
that is insane. And how dare you be our elected officials and allow these folks to gouge us like that, but you allow them to sell it to Canada or England or France for pennies on the dollar.
Right. So as a retiree group here, the United Auto Workers put together a bus in the 1990s that would go to Windsor, Canada to buy medication. People would go and get 90 days worth of medication at a fifth or half the price, worst case scenario, come back over the border. This is before 9/11, so there wasn't a big deal. They could all just ride the bus. They stopped for lunch at some buffet, boom, and they came right back to Fort Wayne, Indiana. And they had a bus, they had 50 people on that bus who all went there and did that. And I at the time we were just, why is this a thing? And it was, again, that drug controlled price, again, by Big Pharma, and making sure that it took care of Big Pharma and screw the retirees. And so we found ways around it, but it's not something you can really do now.
You know who can afford that? Go ahead.
No, I can't. We just dove into some of the data and looking at the polling and looking at what matters to the voters here in Indiana. And across the board, regardless of party or label, one of the top issues is the cost of drugs, the cost of medication comes up time and time again. Yeah. The other thing that I found very striking when you dove into this social service net and Medicaid, when you reduce that, the other entity is how much money actually does go to rural hospitals and to clinics, X-ray services, traveling X-ray service, mammographies, all those early preventive screenings that are covered, nursing homes. The amount of money that goes from that fund into helping our elder care.
And that's where Medicaid cuts would really, really slash.
Oh my
and
God.
hurt.
I don't understand the lifetime cap on Medicaid. I do not understand that. That literally
whoever dreamed that up is making money on it. That's all I can think of.
But wait, how could you? If everybody's getting a life, eventually you're gonna run out of people.
Well, you know what? I don't know who tweeted, but one of the folks who's on MSNBC who really is following this, he basically, his quote of the day was supercharging the privatization of Medicare and Medicaid. That's
right.
the ultimate going down the track. That's where they're going with it. And we,
Because public education, Medicare, Medicaid, they are three things they know they need. So if they privatize that, they turn that money into their little coffers so they can turn around and say,
Yeah.
hey, friend, here's your $1 million. Hey,
Yeah.
friend, here's your 103,000. You know,
But
and
that's
that
not
list
what's
goes
going to
on.
happen when
No.
people are going to choose between their health and food, their health and a roof over their head, their
Yes.
health or their child's health.
Being done today now.
It's
Right.
being done today,
well,
and
that's the key. You know, I think all of us get all roused up about this because it goes back to when John McCain was on the floor of the Senate and the Trump administration, Trump wanted to kill Obamacare, right? Okay,
Mhm.
you don't think it's working, but when you poll it, it is super popular across America. The problem is they wanted to sink it, dump it out, but did they have a plan to replace it?
never had a plan.
Not a single page of it. It was blank pages when he stood there and said, here's the plan. They were all blank pages.
Exactly.
Nothing.
So when you talk about Braun's tax plan to reduce property taxes, where's your plan to compensate for the lack of income going to our education, our schools, busing our children, our fire protection, our police, any of those community services, our health departments? You know, the next restaurant you go in, look around. Your health department pays for the inspections that come around to keep your food safety, you know, your food safe.
Baby, because if
Right?
y'all ain't never had food poisoning, oh Jesus, I
There
pray.
you go.
Yeah,
So, I
right.
mean, like, what happened again? I think the themes are coming out with this Project 25 is privatization and whatever happened to community living and of us kind of coming together and, you know, collectively lifting up some of the quality of life and some of these services that we all need and we share.
I want to go back to what you were saying about the nursing homes, because, you know, there used to be a time where we would keep our elders in our family homes, right?
Sure. And share it.
And
yeah.
share it. I was fortunate enough that I was able to let my parents literally live out their last days in their house. I was very, very fortunate because they had done the work when they were younger to have enough money so that I could get some help and things like that. Everybody doesn't have that. Everybody can't work
Yeah.
that long. I'm scared because if you're going to put a lifetime cap on Medicaid, which
Yeah, good
also
point.
funds nursing homes, when that person is in a nursing home and they have reached their lifetime cap, which they're saying 36 months. 36 months of a lifetime cap on Medicaid. Where do they go?
Yeah.
Right? They already trying to make it illegal to be unhoused.
Yep.
So where do they go? These elderly people who may not have family, they could be like me, was a Rolling Stone, and then, you know, didn't get hitched and have kids. What do we
Yeah.
do?
You know,
Yeah,
it's
you're left
interesting.
alone.
You know, if this is where we get it wrong. Dana, you mentioned it before about, you know, other countries are getting it right. This is where, you know, when my husband, he's from Europe, he's from overseas in Scotland, when his mother passed away, she only spent a small portion of her life in elder care, and they call them care homes, a care home. It was maybe 6 months. And she died in her 90s, 93, right? Most of her life, and here's the kicker, was spent in her own home. When she was aging, and she could no longer climb the stairs, and you know, she really wanted to stay in the home. One of the services that the county council offers is to retrofit her downstairs bathroom with a shower. Rather than
Beautiful.
they think, because they really truly feel keeping someone aging in their community, she'd still walk to the store, go to the library, still part of the community, that it was less cost effective, which it is, to retrofit the bathroom downstairs with the shower than, you know, having the additional on their national health care services, putting his mother into her name was Mary too, to put Mary into elder care. Now, how wonderful is that? She stays longer in her community. She stays thriving. You know, we all know when you're stimulated, when you're age, you see the family, her cousins would come over. They still have afternoon tea because that's what you do in Britain. You still have afternoon tea. whatever happened to taking care of our elderly community? We can if we want to. It's a
Right.
choice.
It's
It is
that
a
familiar
choice.
surrounding too. It's that and they there have a familiar surrounding all the way through. I saw a photo recently of a lady standing in 1933 or 34 at the age of like 6 at a doorway in her backyard in England. And here she was now at 95 standing in the same doorway. It was her parents' home, then it was her home. And that's how the whole thing went. She never moved anywhere else. Yes, she was single and never had any children, but family around, cousins and everybody took care of her. And so did the county and everybody else. It was everybody's family. That's what we're missing. Big
Well,
key.
Well, we're also a disposable nation. We dispose
Yeah.
of everything. When you get to the point where you no longer can be a contributor to the economy, they will throw you away. I mean, and this is why we have to rise up. Like, this is why we're talking about this, because we need people to understand what humans need. Go, Mary.
This is getting to me a little because I noticed this morning in the news, I was circling back. I think people forget that Medicaid is outsourced to insurance companies. It is guaranteed by the federal government because we take care of
Backed by it, yes. Yep.
backed, correct. But then it's outsourced. Let me read you a little something that popped up in the morning news a couple days ago. This is from July 18th. Okay. It's in reference to a nursing home struggling in the Indianapolis area. A nursing home basically relies on Medicaid reimbursements to pay the bills and keep the lights on. Indiana's Family and Social Service Administration used to manage those reimbursements directly, but as of July 1, the state contracted that out to 3 different insurance companies. Since then, News 13 has heard that the senior care facility hasn't gotten paid.
What?
Oh,
How are they? Wait. Huh?
how do they keep the doors open?
How they keep the door? How they feeding
That's the
people? How they paying staff?
That's what's going on. The company is claiming that they're going to have to turn the lights off because they're not getting paid. So the system is not working. You want to privatize it even more. I'm not saying every governmental service is perfect. Of course, there's things we can always improve on.
Sure.
But just throwing out the whole system and further privatizing something that has some issues is not going to solve the problem on the backs of our elder care who are struggling right now.
Well, one of the things that we've been looking to do is to, as our candidates, we're not bringing any candidates on this show, but if we're asking candidates, if you hear of a great story, to go ahead and film it and send it
on
into
the campaign trail.
on the campaign
Yeah.
trail, share it with so that we can hear what's happening with your constituents. Mark, you were telling me a great story about Heidi, who's running. What
Yeah.
district? Mary, that's your candidate. So
House District 5.
House
She's-
District 5,
she was
yep.
I think she was in Mishawaka walking the streets, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, in the district, though, knocking on doors. And one of the key things she said was this family is there and they have a disabled child who needs full-time care. There has to be a parent or someone, some entity has to be there to watch and work with that child at every turn. So the Medicaid that they receive is so important. Any cuts to that, and this state jacked them big time because of oops, that was an accounting error. Golly, we won't do that again. We'll be better next year. And meanwhile, these folks are suffering horribly. So they told her, and it tugged on her heartstrings a lot. And she did a quick video about it. And that's the kind of things that we were talking about, saying, hey, let's make sure that people get to hear these kind of stories, because it's really pulls on you to realize that this is a real life situation. That's just one door that Heidi knocked on. How many more? What are there, 67,000 potential homes and people in that district, Mary? Am I right? And I saying in House District 5, that's a hell of a lot of people. She talked to one family who's suffering like that. I guarantee there's hundreds more like that too.
well, let's take a listen. Let's take a listen to that family so that you guys can get a feel for
That
what we're
story,
talking
yeah.
about. Yeah, let's take a listen.
I'm out canvassing today. It's Saturday afternoon, and it's been an amazing day. I had a long list. I did 57 doors today, and I spoke to 47% of the folks at those houses. It's been an amazing day. Heidi for state rep. I wanted to tell you about a couple of the conversations that I had, and one was I have a mom who had her 3 adult children move back into her house because her children can't afford rent. Their wages can't keep up, and they can't keep up with those bills, so they've actually moved back in with her. I spoke to another family who is taking care of their disabled son, And remember that $1 billion Medicaid shortfall that the state had last year? And then they took away the support for family members who are caring for a disabled child. They've lost that funding. And that family talked about what that did to their family budget and losing those dollars. So there's some really serious conversations that happened. And then there were also a lot of really terrific conversations. There's a lot of energy that's happening right now. People were excited about the national election and what that's bringing about. They're excited about Jennifer McCormick at the top of the ticket. They're excited for change. I mean, honestly, that was the thread running through all the conversations, is that people want change. They want common sense government. And a number of people use the word humanity. They wanted humanity to return to Indiana and to our government. And so while it has been hot, my feet are tired, I think my knees are a little sore too, I'm hungry and thirsty. It was well worth it. I've so enjoyed the day talking to all the people that I got a chance to talk to. So thank you to everybody that I canvassed today. Thanks, Mishawaka.
Wow.
Yeah, I said when I saw the video, I stopped what I was doing, and you scroll. Oh, here's Heidi doing another video, but the look on her face at the beginning of it was like, oh, okay, something's going on, which made me want to hear it. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It just hits home. This is not an accounting error issue. This is a family's real life situation. If people aren't familiar with it, when the accounting or the error happened in the State House, they found a $1 billion accounting error, which impacted a big portion of the Medicaid going to families that rely on that because there's somebody in their home that needs 24-hour round-the-clock care. And what that allows them to do is either A, bring somebody in, or B, one of the primary caregivers don't have to go out into work because
Yes.
that's what the money compensates. So now the mother was like, I haven't been in the workforce. I need to go to work. How do I go to work and leave my child with somebody else who has not been up to speed with the healthcare? It's a big issue, but it was a whoops, according to our GOP. They didn't figure out how to best help these communities that we serve, that live in our folks that live in our community. And Heidi's story real brought it home. And you're
Yeah.
right, Mark. This is not a one-off. This is not just a one-off situation. It's happening around the state.
So the fact that they have accountants that can't count in the State House is problematic. But hey, I am no accountant, but I can count, right? But the other part is that to solve the problem, they could have used some of that surplus, but instead of using the surplus, they damaged the families.
Right. They passed it on to the consumer again.
I don't understand who is thinking about the people. And this is happening right here in our State House, $1 billion error. Come on, bro.
Yeah.
I know every penny in my bank account because it's only pennies.
Yeah.
Well, and all the shiny little mailers I got saying, look at all we did this last legislative session, not a one mentioned that.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. It's like, what? I got in a Twitter fight with one of the state reps. I think it was Teshka. And, he was saying,
You go
Yeah.
for doing that. Thank you.
It was last year when they were singing and they were clapping them and slapping behind their backs that they put so much money into the education fund and they put all these dollars. Granted, they did, but let's go to the 360 overview. They put that money in that only brought the education funded up to Mitch Daniel years. That's how far behind we are in funding education. So to say that you put all this great money in terms of the national average and how much you're spending on our students, you are way under funding our school systems. You are way off. It looks good on paper, but the reality is, our students and kids are still hurting.
Well,
It's just how they frame the argument. They're framing it as that we are taking care of you, and the end of discussion. Don't dig any deeper. He said he's taking care of us.
So how do you take care of people if you're ending Head Start?
Yeah, correct. Right.
Make that make sense.
I went to, I remember as a child in the 60s, old kid here, that we had lunches that were provided for families through our county. This is Wisconsin, because they were having difficulties financially, and no one was proud of it. And those kids hung their head, but we knew who they were, but we didn't make fun of them. We didn't give them a hard time. There was only a handful of them, but they got free lunch. They even got a breakfast when they came in there in the morning because their families were having a hard time, and you understood that. And I remember my mother talking about it because she was an educator. She told me, hey, if you see anybody dogging these kids out, giving them a hard time, you shut it down. And I remember saying that to a couple other kids, and they stopped, and others helped me to help make sure that those things stop. But those are the kind of things that we did. We did that in the past. It can be done, and we don't do it. We
And
just
Project
let it.
2025 wants to make it even harder for low-income families who need food assistance to get that food assistance.
Right.
That was a great story, but these guys don't want anybody to feed hungry kids.
Yes,
In fact,
those kids got to figure it out.
they got to figure it out. In fact, they want to, we talked about, funding for Head Start. We talked about how they want to cut Medicaid. But the scariest part, I think, about all of this is that they want to turn Medicaid into a block grant.
Yeah.
Oh,
And then change the structure of it inside of that then too. So you have to, as the person who receives it, go through hoops. What if you're a single person who has disabilities but can kind of get this job over here, and your family's abandoned you because you're an adult now and you've got to figure it out, and Medicaid is part of your life? Yet the structure of the money that keeps coming to you is getting smaller and smaller, and you're in an apartment that this landlord's abusing you. The list goes on. Those are the same stories that Heidi ran into, but these are single people who don't have a support network. It's very, very difficult. And that's the rudeness of it to me, is the callousness of, I don't care. That's your thing. Figure it out.
Yeah. And when you look at those block grants, I don't know if you folks saw this as a red flag. They were throwing those block grants back to the states.
Uh-huh. Oh,
That's where they want it controlled. They want
You
that
got
goes
it.
back to, that's their key thing. The states will handle this. Yeah.
Exactly.
I told y'all when they start talking about states' rights, I have a DNA flashback. So that's why I'm bringing it up. And that means somebody is going to pick and choose who has access,
who wins and who loses.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and that's problematic. That is not the way to do things. And when they write this stuff out, they're telling you exactly who they are, and why won't people believe them?
I believe that they want to hurt others, so I'm seeing it day in and day out, and every piece of it.
Christians.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, they're cafeteria Christians, so they pick what they want and put it on their platter.
Yeah.
That's just my opinion,
Wow.
please.
Okay.
Well, I think so. A lot of the studies that I'm involved in, and it goes back to the abortion ban. When abortion was being talked about, people said, "Oh no, it's not going to happen." We all were brought up on the schoolhouse rocks. The checks and balances. That's what the Supreme Court's going to be there. We all know if you were following it. We all know they were stacking the court. If you weren't following it, you still had that mental block that it's just not going to happen. That's going too far. They're not going to do it. But what has happened is they have done it, and it is our job to start talking, start drawing the through line that it has happened, it will continue to happen, and here we are giving you examples of a state of Indiana that
How they're going to do it.
They're going to do it. There's this misconception because these things are so unbelievable, and it's hard to wrap your head around it, that they would ever think of doing such things that go against the common good.
Well, and it's scary because they're talking about doing all these things that we already know are going to be harmful to humans. They don't even know what the economic impact is going to be. Now, mind you, these are the people that want a strong economy, but they don't even know what the impact of the Medicaid cuts will have on the long-term fiscal body of the United States. And to put it back on the states, the way the Indiana hoards money, saving for a rainy day when you got holes in your roof.
Well, what's Indiana going to do? They're going to put more red tape in the way on their way to do that. They're going to make you have more speed bumps to trip over that you can't get it done. Meanwhile, you're so frustrated with it that you just give up on it, which is their hope. That's how they treat unemployment and workers' compensation in this state. So why not do that too?
Oh yeah. Well, I'm a persistent woman. I will hound you, baby. People was holding on.
I'm making some phone calls. We're knocking on some doors. Absolutely.
I had somebody holding on to $455. I about lost my mind for 2.5 weeks. You gonna give me my money?
Right.
You know what doesn't?
I'm in the
what
midst of that too. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. You know, Rich, going back to like, why are they doing this? What I struggle with when you look at the studies, over 90% of Democrats are in favor of Medicaid, and over 32% of Republicans are in favor. Excuse me, let me back up. 90% of Democrats are in favor of Medicaid, and 65% of Republicans are also in favor of Medicaid.
Because they
Why?
know someone who it impacts.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
Yep.
But they don't see, they look at party first. You know, we always talked about people, country over party, things like that. That is just a term I don't think we can ever get back to at this point.
I don't even think it's party.
That's left. Yeah.
I don't
You
think
don't think so?
No, I think it's because look, even the reasonable Republicans are like, what the hell? Right?
Yeah.
Isn't there a prominent Republican that is endorsing Kamala Harris right now because he's like, the party is nothing. Michael Steele, the former chair of the RNC, is like, maggots are crazy. MAGA is crazy. I always call them maggots.
Right. I know. It's a great slip. I do appreciate it.
The thing is, we talked about this before, and history buff Mary, I know you know. They began this process a long time ago. We talked about this last week, 1964 Civil Rights Act, 1965 Voting Rights Act, and the Housing Act that came right behind that, where it protected marginalized groups, right? You were no longer allowed to deny Black folks the right to vote. Well, wait a minute. Wait, you gonna let them vote? Whoa. You want them to have a say in our government? Now you can't discriminate against them in housing, meaning they can live next to me. White flight was a real thing. So
big time.
Yep.
So they've been seeing this again. This is not all white folk. This is not like, I'm talking to two amazing white people right now. We are sharing this time together right now with two amazing white people who are in lockstep with me. Former Sullivan Mayor Clint Lamb, rural Indiana. We are in lockstep. So it's not all. There are just these folks who believe that people of color and other marginalized groups are getting something that they were supposed to get, and they don't want to have to compete for it. So if we can eliminate affirmative action, who benefited the most from affirmative action? Women. And it was white women. We want to eliminate all the things that kind of level the playing field because mediocre white dudes don't want to have to compete. Because when you're giving them opportunity to compete. So now, okay, we're going to strip all those. We're going to make them hungry. We're going to take away their overtime. We're going to make them so that they have, you know this, Mark, they're removing workers' protections and labor laws to have unsafe work environments. Right.
So, exactly. We had an Amazon worker killed here in Fort Wayne, crushed in a horrible death. And the $8,500 is what they were fined. It was what Amazon was fined.
Wow.
Did the family get anything? There is no compensation to the family. This person was 24, 25 years old. They have to find the money to bury their child, in this case, their young adult. But the state fined them the money. The state took the money. That money didn't come to that family.
That's crazy.
It's horrid.
Wow.
There are, in the state of Indiana, digits on your finger. If you lose the first 2 digits of your finger, there's a percentage you get for that, and it's paltry in a workman's compensation situation. Lose the whole hand, we'll have a little higher discussion. It's pathetic, but that's how it's been built, because only people who have that injury know how horrid it is. The business loves it. That's what brings business here. We love that. We're going to take care of the business.
But see,
that's what it's all
this
about.
is what I don't understand. There are more of us than there are of them. And,
right.
and they have and
apathy. They want you to have that apathy and stay away from it.
Or they make them believe that they will be wealthy and rich like that too. So I am not going to demonize the wealthy and rich people, because I too, who barely graduated high school.
I'm on the cusp of millionaire. Yes,
I'm almost there. I'm almost there. So I don't.
No.
So it's delusional. But there's more of us, and that's the reason why I even said what I said is because we have more in common than we do indifference. You know, we come from 3 different parts of the state. We have 3 different backgrounds. You know, we love differently. We look differently. We may even pray differently. But here we are saying that humanity is worth more than what businesses are trying to profit off of us for. And if we don't take ownership of this citizen government soon and get so involved that they have to kick us out, they're going to they're going to make it so miserable for us. The Soviet people in the Soviet Union ain't happy. Don't let Tucker Carlson tell you that BS.
He's been paid a lot of money to say that.
Oh my
Same
God.
with going to Hungary too.
Going to Hungary,
Yeah. Or
Yep.
going to
With
China.
Orban.
Those people are not happy. That's why they want the freedoms that we have. And these people are working diligently to remove those freedoms. They are working hard. And if we let them back in office, that's what they're going to do. And they're
The
going to
destruction is coming. Yeah.
And if you're not healthy and you have health issues, good luck to you. Don't have sickle cell, because I know they ain't going to do nothing for sickle cell. Took them 100 years to find it. 100 years before there was an advancement in sickle cell.
Right. That's it. And how many lives were lost through that time? Too many to count. No one's statting that number.
I don't think the stats are even correct on that.
No.
Probably not. Yeah.
No.
Because who was keeping them?
Right.
Well,
Maybe the rural doctor who happened to know, but there was no, formal group that was ever overseeing that.
Yeah. And let's talk about Social Security. Now we done worked the worker to the bone. Right? We done
Now they've reached that age to collect.
Right.
And they want you to stay in the work world till at least your 70s now.
And
Right.
all
Not
the
67. Yeah, 70.
and all the money that you've put in. It's not like the government is giving you a handout. You actually paid into it. They're saying they don't want you to have. Where that money going?
Well, you know what kills me? It's like it's your bank account, technically. Like, you've been putting this money in all
Week after week as an hourly person.
Week after week. You watch it on your paycheck. If you get that annual little report, the charts and graphs right there, it is technically your bank account. Where is it in our code of ethics or our collective norms that if you put money in a bank account, you cannot take it back?
Ever.
Yeah, true. But they're somehow working it out to say that it's not solvent. And we can thank Ronald Reagan for that, who was a murderer and a thug. I want to always add that too when I say that.
Glad you
his
said it.
system, well, I've always said that. His system was to make sure that all the things that the Powell memo started in the 1970s would come to fruition, because he stood there with a Teamster jacket on, shiny as he could be, acting like he was just like a union man, only to take the rights away from union workers and continue to do that. And then allowed the federal FCC to change their rules for fairness doctrine and all those things. And now we get Rush Limbaugh, who convinces everybody week after week, day after day, that it was the public schools that screwed him, and that it was some minority person getting something for free. You remember the whole welfare queen in his second run for office, and how that found one individual that somehow built the system, but portrayed it as every person that's receiving anything like that is doing that to you. How come they don't go to work and you go to work every day? But that's what was ground into us every day. Every AM radio station on a delivery truck that was delivering someone heard this day in and day out. And that's what we did. We built this where we are today. Rush Limbaugh's gone. Does anybody talk about him in any way? I do, because the guy was a POS. That's just my opinion. Obviously, form your own.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. And this ain't got nothing to do with nothing. I could never figure out why Monday Night Football put him on Monday Night Football. I was what? What was you gonna get out of that?
That's when I started shutting the audio off. I just watched the game.
That was just dumb. But yeah, but you're right. You got a society of people who are not interested.
Been convinced.
Yeah, and they're not interested in finding out for themselves. Like, we are reading, and sometimes I read stuff and it don't make sense to me because it's written in legalese. Also, something else to consider. They don't teach Latin no more. They keep telling you it's a dead language, but most of our legal documents are written in Latin. But anyway, that's a whole other story.
You have to, if you're a lawyer, you have to do that. It's another story altogether.
I'll have to say that was one of the best things my daughter did. She took 4 years of Latin.
Yeah. Most of our legal. But anyway, we have people who don't know how to read the information, look for the information. I mean, my God. We used to have to go to the library. We used to have to go to the library, look in the Dewey Decimal System, and get your daggone card and walk and find the dang book. Now all you
Yeah.
gotta do is sit on your computer and look up credible, reputable, pieces of information. And people don't even want to do that.
Well,
Right.
it's by design. It's by design. Make it complicated. Talk about the same issues. I don't know. When Kamala Harris was nominated unofficially, we're still waiting for the convention, of course. But you noticed, did you see the sing song come out of basically all the Indiana representatives here? You got Jim Banks and Rudy Youngkin. They all said the exact same thing.
Oh,
They
yeah.
all said the exact
I follow
same
them all on Twitter, and unfortunately, every one of their staffers posted the same
Same
exact
charts.
thing, the same charts, and it was unfortunate. But every one of them, I went back and forth through all of them. I don't care if it was Greg Pence or it was Hauken or Spats. It just drove me nuts. Every one of their staffers who does run their Twitter account horribly said the same thing. Every one of them, and you could go down their timeline. It was equal, released at the same time. It was horrid.
You better be careful how
Exactly.
much you go on their Twitter feed. That shit could be contagious.
Toxic. It's toxic. Well, the thing is,
I'm a troll. They treat me as a troll, and I love that. I am that guy. Thank you.
Oh, I love it.
I want to let me just say this right now. Every day, I post on Twitter in the morning and tag the entire congressional team from the state of Indiana because they support Trump and the domestic terrorists that overtook our capital on 1/6/21. And I have done that since the 10th of January in 2021. I have not missed a day, and I will continue to do that because we cannot forget that, and they want us to forget that.
Yep.
All right, I'm off my soapbox.
That's all
no,
right. Go, Mary.
really
You,
good.
you had a thought.
No, I had a thought because it's by design. It's orchestrated, so we don't read, so we don't know what's going on. You only hear the high level, national news stuff. So what we have to start doing, and folks, is that's why we're talking about this. That's why we're here. We want to try to bring it down to a granular level, a little bit of the impact here in Indiana, how it's going to impact us as citizens here. And the ask of you folks is, we know the number one trusted source is when we start talking to each other.
Yeah.
We start sharing stories, how it's impacting me, how it's impacting my family. And the second thing you can do is when you have these strong, amazing candidates out there and they send you a newsletter, send it off to 3 people and ask those 3 people to send it off with some juicy information so you can learn about what's happening in community. If you see a town hall coming, if you're not sure, if you've never met the candidate, go and meet them. Ask them questions. They will be more than happy to answer your questions and are welcoming. That's what we're here for. We need to change the landscape and who we're electing into these positions of power.
There's one other thing you need to remind them. And I appreciate the call to action you just gave, but I want you to tell them also, do not be afraid. I cannot tell you how many times I have talked to, fellow Democrats in rural parts of Indiana who are afraid to come out.
Oh, yeah.
They're
Yep.
afraid to say who they are. And if you're afraid to talk to another human, you live there.
Yeah.
That is
Right.
your neighbor. I am never going to be able to convince them of anything like you can.
Right.
And
You
if-
are the only tool that can get that done.
So stop being afraid to have the conversation. I know that remember, don't talk about religion, don't talk about politics, and don't talk about money. Well, we've got to, because if we don't, people will be hurt. They will be so harmed if we don't keep talking about this.
And here's a tip. Here's a trick. We have to talk to our neighbors. And I understand the fear because people, they're your neighbors. You don't want to have disagreements, but here's how you start the conversation. You ask them how they're doing. You ask them how their day is. You ask the challenges they're facing. And within those conversations, when you put your listening ears on, I sound like I'm back in the classroom. When you start listening, you will find you have more in common than you have in differences.
Yeah.
Okay. And therefore, you'll find the shared values you share. And then when you find those shared values, like whether it's we all agree that we all should be able to have a high quality education. We should all be able to go to a local hospital. We should not have to drive 40 miles for accessible childcare and affordable childcare. When you start talking about those issues, you'll find you have more in common when you share the same values. Now, you might have some differences, how you solve some problems. That's natural. And that's where we get to the good stuff and we solve problems. When you find those shared values, you will find you both align with the same Democrat candidate that shares those same values, that want us all thriving, moving Indiana forward, and getting us back on track where our communities are back to where they need to be with high quality education, hospitals for everybody to go to services, OGBYNs, Okay, we have the highest. We are the dead last in infant mortality right now.
And
Dead
black maternal
last.
mortality too.
Thank you, Dana Black. That's a great point too. In the minority community, it's even worse.
Yeah,
too.
I said black. You know.
Yeah, right.
When we don't have hospitals, when we don't have OGBYNs are not getting trained here in Indiana because they're not seeing the breadth and depth of services they need to provide to women for healthcare.
Yeah.
So they're
yeah.
not being trained here. So
And we also need then you have like dumb people wanting to defund the Kinsey Institute, where we're actually teaching about gender and teaching about all the nuances of humanity. Oh, no, we're not going to fund that anymore. So we're not even training. We don't even want to talk about it. Right. And we also need
back in the closet.
And then listen, these people with their DEI hire nonsense, they have they
that's a show on its own.
Oh my God, bro! The idea that learning and understanding someone who is different than you is somehow problematic. Tell me you're stupid without telling me you're stupid.
Right.
Well, so they tie it. If you listen to what they say, DEI hire. So what they are saying, they're masking the fact that,
she's
that black female, the only reason she got that is, I can't say that. Oh, I can say she's a DEI hire.
Yeah.
And look, I'm clean.
Actually, bro.
It's code. It's code. It's
DEI,
just like
DEI is a new N word. So quit playing.
Thank you.
It's a
Yeah, I know. I'm here to say as a white guy, I hear it. I know.
I'm gonna say what you can't say, and I appreciate y'all respecting the space so much that you just let me. That's why I knew this was a good mix. But anyway, that's so not the point. But like literally, you have a bunch of people. So if you have people in the general population who do not believe in DEI, do you not think that you have people in the medical field who also do not believe in DEI? And when they see a black woman come in, they have a different assessment of her than that when a white woman comes in. It happened to me. I know
they changed their listening skill.
Yeah, it happened to me. I was fortunate enough to get I have a woman of color who I never ask. I don't ask where people are from, but her and I'm not gonna tell you her name, but she is definitely from the Middle East place because she's got, I know that. But this woman of color has been on it with me. Right. She's been on this journey with me.
That's great to hear. Yeah.
When I was dealing with doctors, when I deal with white male doctors, they don't get it. I even went to a white male dermatologist and he gave me medication that took all of my hair out. So I have a Filipino dentist, I have a black dermatologist, and I have a Middle Eastern, and I want to say she's either Indian or Pakistani. I don't know, and I don't want to be offensive.
It doesn't matter. She's competent and she's taking care of you.
But my point is they have different lived experiences.
Correct.
And because of their different lived experiences, they see me as a whole human.
Yeah.
And think about it. If I'm not getting the best and the brightest in my state, is that person going to see me as a whole human? And I'm on Medicaid, right? I ain't even got no money. So are you going to treat me? That was what I was trying to tie in, was that you have this DEI stuff and you have these people who have got blinders on that there are differences because they're genetic differences. They don't want to believe it. And so when we go to these doctors, the black mortality rate is higher because we have doctors who don't see these black women as humans. Mm-hmm. They don't believe. Do you know they at one point, history buff, history, they at one point they actually believed black skin was thicker than white skin. Like this is, they used to say we had tails.
Yep.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So how many people still carrying that nonsense with them?
Because mom, dad, grandma all talk that way. So that's what they heard. That's what they know.
Yep. But what's really interesting is when you start talking to the kids, when they see kids, we have to go back to when the kids play on playgrounds and they just play together because it's fun.
Yeah.
We did. I had all kind of little white friends. We'd go over to their house and bounce on their trampoline, and they would come over our house. We had water balloon fights, and we would have fun. And it wasn't until we got into the real world that we was like, really?
Right.
Oh, we have to think this way? Oh.
Yeah. That's programmed. We all know that. That's programmed.
Yep.
Oh, I have to do what?
Yep.
Oh, you put me on this education track?
Yep. Yep. Did I ever tell you the story of John Smith?
Who's John
Speaking about
Smith?
education. Well, it's an education book that when you're in education space, a lot of people read it. It's called John Smith. Very common name. It was in the Chicago area that these two students, they come into sixth grade and they have to take their placement test to go into the higher
Yeah.
level. It's very common, very common. Well, what they did was they got the John Smith's academic records mixed up. So John Smith, who scored really high, went to the lower tracks, and John Smith, who scored lower, went to the higher tracks. Okay. Now, John Smith, who was supposed to be in the lower tracks, who went to the higher tracks, rose to the bar, rose to the occasion, excelled, did fine, did fine. Okay. Didn't matter because he just rose to the expectations because he was treated with equity and inclusion. And then the other student who went down to the other tracks was in seventh grade, eighth grade, ninth grade, bored out of his skull, started to get into trouble until a biology teacher in 10th grade said, something's quite right here. Goes into the school records and go, oh, look what happened. We basically put you down here because we taught to the expectations that we put on you. We taught you to the expectations that we put on you.
Wow.
So it just tells you that that in education and life, there's a reason for these certain protections, and if we don't have them, that's what ends up happening.
And if we want to keep these protections, y'all, we got to show up in November, guys. This was a riveting conversation. We hit it. We talked about the social safety net. We tied in, Mike Braun's property tax reduction that's going to hurt so many social services. Mary, go ahead and give us your final thoughts so we can wrap this show up.
I'm going to give you your final thoughts. One of my biggest thing right now in the state of Indiana is running in House seats that are uncontested. And when you look across the state right now, we do have candidates stepping up and running in seats that were previously uncontested. And I'm going to give a shout out for Kyle Fay. He's in District 83. He's running against the district where Chris Judy, he is a representative of the GOP. He's the one who instituted the new voter ID and making it harder for young folks to get their voter registration. That seat went uncontested. So thank you, Kyle, for stepping up.
Two different cycles went uncontested.
Exactly. Two different
Kyle
cycles.
Thiele, yes.
Yep. How do you say his last name?
Thiele.
Yep.
Thiele.
Thiele.
In fact,
Yep.
for this episode, when I posted, and I'll send you the link, I interviewed Kyle. He's a great interview.
So did I. I interviewed him on Turn Left.
Yeah, exactly. So,
See, we're all
Mary,
looking at it. Yep,
yeah.
we're all noticing it. We're all noticing. So if you see Kyle, thank him.
Donate to him. He's on ActBlue.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Volunteer for him. You need to be, that is a perfect example of why we don't let seats go uncontested, because that district, 2 cycles in a row. And now we have 2 more voter suppression legislations went through, and it's making harder for young folks to vote. That's my piece for today.
All right. Mark, final thoughts.
My final thought is right on the heels of what you just talked about, Mary, because let's remember that person, Chris Judy, who had been in there since 2012, I think, got in there on a whim. No one contested it. Then he had a teacher, an educator, ran against him, Michael Benz. Good thing for him running against him, but didn't do very well because he didn't really have a campaign or any strategy to get there. Kyle actually has that, and he's out there and wants to talk to people. And we'll link that here in the show notes that you can actually go listen to my interview. Obviously, Dana Black did a great interview with him. Mine was a little bit longer because I had a whole hour with him. But when you listen to these kind of candidates, from his heart, he ran because this is the right thing to do. He's thinking about his young family, and he's thinking about his community and what he can do to help. The guy he's running against, let's not forget, brought legislation that was so hateful, brought it forward. His own GOP wouldn't take it out of committee. I rest my case.
There it is.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah.
Well, my final thought is, I love the collaboration, and my saying is, there's enough sun for everybody to shine. I am enjoying this collab that we are doing here, Mary and Mark. This is great. It's different than what I do at Turn Left. It's a different type of conversation. You guys are bringing so much to the table, and my call to action is this. One, if you're going to French Lick, come say hi to the girl. I don't know. I'm going to get this out before French Lick. I got to get it out before French Lick.
That's the challenge.
Okay. But more importantly, just remember, if you have a skill set, bring it to the movement. It doesn't matter what it is. You don't have to be podcasters like us. You don't have to be strategists like Mary. You don't have to work at Act Blue like Dana. You don't have to be a public speaker like Mark and Dana. You have something unique about who you are. Bring your talent to the movement. There is enough work that needs to be done, and there's enough of us to go around, and there's enough sun for all of us to shine. And that's my call to action. All right, guys, this is great. All right, you know what, Mary, just for you, we're going to tease them. Next week, what are we talking about?
Next week, we're going to talk about reproductive rights and the freedoms that women need to have, because reproductive rights, just equity, equality, inclusion, it's all wrapped up in there. That's where we're going to leave it next week, reproductive rights.
That's
wow.
it. Let's
as a
talk,
white
Indian.
man, hey, as a white man, I want to just say, I have so many women in my life. Abortion is healthcare. I want to say that.
All right. Well, let's talk, Indiana.
Dana, thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Mary.
Peace.
Thank you for listening. Click the like and subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode.
Let's Talk Indiana is a joint production of Mary Noon of Campaign Strategy, Mark Gavart of My Labor Radio, and Indiana's own Dana Black of Turn Left.